Life-ruining revenge 6 years in the making. DLDR at the end. English is my first language and I'm on mobile. Not sure if this fits here but it seems pretty nuclear to me. Now that that's out of the way, the backstory, I have had a on-again off-again relationship with this girl since junior high. We've constantly been in each other's lives, even to this day we still talk. I thought I was in love with her, shocker I wasn't. But in high school things got pretty serious between us, and the more serious we got the worse we treated each other when we fought. It was the most toxic relationship I have ever been in, but we're actually great friends now. At the time I was working stock crew at the mall toy store. Sometimes it was a early morning shift, sometimes it was overnight, so my sleep schedule was all messed up. We were dating and sleeping together pretty regularly my entire senior year. She had her circle of friends, I had mine, and they rarely intersected. Enter D-Head Kyle. Knout-head Kyle gave a bad name to all other monster-chugging, drywall assaulting Kyles. He was physically and mentally abusive to his girlfriend, later wife. He manipulated his friends into letting him walk all over them, got one girl hooked on pills after he got her pregnant so she would be forced to give the baby up. Just a next-level scumbag. Kyle was a part of both our circles. He was friends with a few acquaintances I had, and the girl was pretty close to his girlfriend. The girl and I had just had a really bad fight a few days before and had made up in our usual way. As I was getting ready to go to bed for work the next morning, my phone went off. It was a text from Kyle followed by 3 pictures. One nude of my girlfriend, one of my girlfriend and his, and the last one only half loaded, but it was clearly a picture of my girlfriend giving him a job. I was furious, but as I was already graduated I wouldn't run into him again to take my rage out the traditional way, so I just said forget it and moved on with my life. I was still mad at the girl for cheating on me again. This happened multiple times on both ends, so it was forgiven pretty quickly, so we fought it out a few times and eventually made up when she told me the whole story. Kyle had told her I was sleeping with his girlfriend's sister or something and that this was how she should get back at me. Now was it petty and dumb? Absolutely. But he wasn't so bright and the story wasn't so far-fetched that she didn't believe him. She told me that since it was bullshit on his end she was done with both of them and we went on with our lives. The start of the long game. A few years go by. The girl has moved to another state but we still keep in touch, and out of the blue Kyle's wife hits me up on the Book of Faces. We talk about how life has been and whatnot, where we live and such. Turns out she's just down the street from me. We keep talking every so often when she texts one day asking for a favor. I'm not working that day and bored out of my mind, so I oblige and run a pack of smokes down to her since she's out and can't get more because of her kid. I get to her apartment and we hang out for a bit talking. We head out to the patio for a cigarette and in the daylight her shirt is almost completely see-through. I make an offhand comment about it and without a second thought she pulls her shirt off. We go back inside and go to town on each other on her and Kyle's bed. We keep the affair going a few weeks then just kinda stop. At this point I felt my revenge was complete. I had this guy's wife on his bed and he won't know till they get into another huge fight. I wipe my hands of the drama and go about my day. Fast forward another few years, my band had just finished a huge show before we went on tour, and as I'm doing the meet and greet thing at our merch booth I get a Facebook message from Kyle. Before the quarantine non-friend messages. Kyle was in the hospital. He said it was serious and had a question. Did you ever spend time with Hannah? I'm looking at this text thinking of all the ways I could mess with his head, but decided to probe a little by saying I think that's something you should ask her first. He replies I did and she told me something happened at our apartment. I need to know if it's true. So I think for a second and send him 2 pictures we took, one of her giving me and one of the aftermath. He just replies THX and blocked me. I think good, now the D knows what it feels like and go about my merry. But this story isn't done yet friendos, not by a long shot. See, unbeknownst to me Hannah and Kyle had another kid around 9 months after our affair and it wasn't Kyle's. From the pictures it was obvious that we didn't use protection and there was no pullout, so he immediately suspected it was mine. Hannah knew better since she was already pregnant when we started, but just barely. Kyle viewed me as his enemy ever since high school because I stole all of his friends. So knowing that he was raising the child of someone he hated just burned him up inside. He turned to hard drugs and became a raging alcoholic, tried to get information on where I lived and kept trying to get revenge on me for all of this but failed miserably, lost his job, his family, what few longtime friends he had. Basically his life just crashed around him. About 2 years ago I reconnected with another ex from high school and she told me the aftermath, what Kyle tried to do, what ended up happening to his life. Hannah took him for everything in their divorce. Last I heard Hess locked up for robbing a liquor store while carrying amphetamines and a loaded pistol, which landed him in for about 12 years. TLDR, guy gets my high school girlfriend to sleep with him, Sends me pictures. I do the same years later and it ruined his life. Comments: I think you were the pawn in this and that Kyle's wife did the revenge. 1. Kyle's wife contacts you out of the blue for some stupid errand. Why? Because she probably knew you hated him or he hated you. 2. When you show up she is wearing something see-through and is immediately down for sex. 3. When he called you, he already knew you had sex with her, so she told him to piss him off. 4. You had 2 pics of her, so she must have known they might get to him, and probably wanted him to get them at some point. 5. She got pregnant by someone else, maybe wanted to throw in some extra partners to really mess with him or make more targets for his rage versus the real father of the child. 6. She divorced him and took him for everything, taking advantage of his time in the hospital I suppose. Yeah. She sounds like the mastermind here. I'd love to hear the story from her view. Revenge story 2. I'll start with my story. I met mine when I was only 15. We went out for a while until he dumped me for someone else. He randomly stopped answering my texts for about a week, then I get a text off him saying he wanted to break up. I was annoyed and hurt that he acted this way. A few days later I see his new girl posting on his Bebo profile and she was his other half. So I went around telling everyone he just uses girls. Turns out that girl cheated on him and nobody would go near him after as he just uses girls, lol sucker. 2 years later we end up back together. He tells me to this day girls still think he is just a user. I told him that's what he got for dumping me so badly like that. He agreed weirdly. We ended up seeing each other for a year and I was totally in love with him. He left me for someone else again, leaving me devastated and turning quite mean and cold about it. The girl gave him the runaround and left him for someone else. Apparently hurt him and put him through the ringer like he did to me twice. No sympathy. He got what he dished out to me twice now. Somehow in my heart I feel bad as I loved him with all my heart, but my head knows he deserves it. We ended up back together a year later. I know at this stage I'm well aware of what could happen again. I was just drawn to this guy. I couldn't stop myself. I craved and loved him like no other. Things were going great for a few months, happy, and I thought he would change. As this the third time being back together. He broke up with me at Christmas, ruined my entire Christmas. Worst part, I was pregnant. Fed me the I don't want to be in a relationship BS but wanted to stay close. Well, not a peep do I hear from him. I find out he got with surprise another poxy girl and was his new girlfriend after telling me he didn't want to be with anyone. I broke down, got so depressed and sick, and lost our baby at 13 weeks. His response was, well, I don't believe you, I can't deal with this now, duck off. And carried. Seeing that girl I was floored. Never in my life did I feel more worthless than I did at that point. I was numb. I remember texting him telling him I was in pain and his response was just take a painkiller. So he told that girl he was seeing that I had a miscarriage and she couldn't handle that. I'd texted him arguing about it most days and she dumped him. She wasn't gonna deal with all the baggage. So he treated me like shit, didn't care I lost his kid and was left on his own. Ducker deserves it. Not once did he ring me or see how I was doing. Didn't ask about it or anything. Whenever I'd text him it would turn into a huge argument over him being so cruel and he just wouldn't care. 6 months later I hear from him he is sorry. He tells me he is so stupid he didn't realize what he had, that me and the baby should have been his first priority and that he was an idiot for hurting me. He says he didn't know how to react. I listened, I tried to understand. I was still hurt and annoyed over everything, but slowly each day he would text seeing how I am, seeing if I am okay, trying to be as caring as possible. I fell for it and forgave him. Things were good for a while. He was kinder and more caring than he ever was. We ended up being intimate for a while. On and off I told him any more girls and I am gone, that he can't have both after all I've been through already. We lasted on and off like this for 3 years. I never once looked at a different guy. I sacrificed myself to him and only ever wanted him. He ends up getting a job, making less time and not bothering to even text me. So I argue and argue at him. He says he will try and he doesn't. I cry again. He ends up secretly chatting to some girl on a dating site and was secretly planning all these dates with her, yet didn't bother even texting me while he was working. I said duck that he is not getting away with this again. I got his car advert that he had up for sale taken down. I commented on it that he was a dirty sex addict that has multiple girls in the backseat and he treated his ex like shit when she was preg. I also contacted his family to tell them what he put me through for years. His exes have told me he treated them bad and would meet up with girls off MSN while he was supposed to be in a relationship. Typical. The girl he is seeing now, looking at her I can't help but laugh. She is probably the most unattractive child looking thing ever. Lol, didn't look happy in one photo with her. And now he is on dialysis as he has kidney failure. And a bonus roommate revenge story. My revenge on Looney Lucy, contender for world's worst roommate. Bring your popcorn, because this is a long one. Looney Lucy is a slovenly, food-stealing, clothing-destroying waste of carbon. I dealt with it by keeping my space clean and ignoring her areas, storing my food at work or my boyfriend's place, and installing a lock on my bedroom door so she couldn't borrow outfits that looked like she could fit into when she had 30 pounds on me. All that made Loony Lucy a bad roommate, but I had my workarounds and she had the one saving grace of being quiet at night. So I put up with it. That is, until she broke our cardinal roommate rule: no one gets a key to the apartment without both roommates agreeing. The rule was sacred. I couldn't even give a key to my boyfriend of more than a year. Unbeknownst to me, Loony Lucy had met a guy online who lived several hours away. Within 2 weeks of meeting him, she invites him to meet IRL and stay over for the weekend. Loony Lucy then mailed this strange man a key to our apartment because he was going to get into town before she got off work. You read that right, a man she talked to for only 2 weeks, had never actually met and who I didn't know about now had a key to our shared apartment, and she wasn't going to be there to greet him. But I was. I'm starting laundry while wearing only my Victoria's Secret robe because I'll be hopping into the shower right after. I hear the lock snick, turn around and see the door swing open to reveal a thin, creepy-looking guy in a trench coat who just stands there silently while I freeze like a ducking idiot rabbit. CLG suddenly steps forward into the apartment. I come out of my startle, scream bloody murder and chuck the laundry detergent at his head before scrambling into my bedroom and locking the door. He's yelling that it's okay, he's Loony Lucy's boyfriend. I scream at him that I don't care who he is, get out or I'm calling the cops, and my 6'4", built like a tank boyfriend. CLG leaves, and to his credit, even locks the door behind him. Poor CLG. I call Loony Lucy and ask her if CLG is her boyfriend and if she gave him a key. She said he was, and she did. She gushes about how they met. I hang up on her mid-sentence and call my boyfriend, who, lucky me, actually is 6'4" and built like a tank. He comes over, we pack up the essentials and I move in with him that day. We hadn't thought we were quite ready for that step. Turns out that in the face of Loony Lucy we were. No apology or even excuses from Loony Lucy when BF and I go back the next week to get the rest of my stuff. She yells at me that it's my fault that I overreacted and that I'm lucky CLG didn't press charges for the mild concussion my laundry detergent gave him. Now, I'm slow to true anger. I'll be with the rest of them, but actual rage is not in my usual repertoire of emotion. But guess what? I'm there now. Loony Lucy needs to pay. Still have that popcorn? Good. Now, the 2-year lease is in my name only because Loony Lucy's credit is so shitty that nowhere in the good part of town would take her. She'd been living with her parents over an hour away from her job for months before we started rooming together. Hindsight tells me this is because no one else would room with her prior to me. Hindsight's a bitch. So there's nothing legally preventing me from subletting the apartment for the remaining 14 months on the lease. I could also evict her, but that wouldn't be nearly as fun as what I decided to do instead. I post a roommate ad on Craigslist, and make it quite the deal. I'll keep my original deposit on file and pay the first 2 months rent and sublet fee, on the condition that they know they're living with food thieving, clothing destroying slob. I may want revenge, but I'm not willing to sucker some innocent person into it. Over the next couple weeks I get a few nibbles, but no one has the flavor I'm looking for to match Loony Lucy. Then I get a message from Kevin. Kevin goes down my list of warnings. Kevin doesn't care about the food thieving, he orders takeout and hates leftovers. For obvious reasons, Kevin isn't worried about Loony Lucy borrowing his clothes. And Kevin admits that he's a huge slob and not having to pay attention to it is actually a plus. Kevin says the 2 months rent seems kind of excessive and that there must be more to the story if I'm willing to pay that on top of the deposit and the sublet fee. So I tell Kevin the rest of the story. Kevin tells me he'll take the deal, but I should know something about him. Kevin says he is very happily active in the singles scene. Not looking to settle down, but very much looking to continue bringing home a revolving door of duck buddies. Sometimes they'll stay for a couple days or a week at a time, so it's good to know the key rule isn't really that big a deal. I tell him it sounds like he and Loony Lucy will be a good roommate match. Kevin fills out the paperwork, leasing office does its credit/background check and gives it the green light. I mail Kevin my key. Kevin moves in. I get a frantic call from Loony Lucy about a strange man showing up saying he lives there with her now. I tell her that's right, he does, and explain the subletting process. She starts raging at me. I hang up and mute her calls. Over the next few days I get a lot of voicemails. Some raging, some whining, some begging. Loony Lucy has been forced to clean and take out the trash like a slave or something because Kevin doesn't bother. Loony Lucy can't move out because she can't get a lease anywhere else and her parents won't let her move back home. Loony Lucy has to keep paying her half of the rent because Kevin told her if she stopped he'd change the locks and move all her stuff out. After a few weeks of radio silence, Loony Lucy calls again and I decide to pick up. She tells me she's so happy to get a hold of me, I have to do something. Kevin is now bringing man home every couple nights and sometimes they don't leave for days and days. Yeah, having a roommate who hands out keys without your consent to guys you don't know is a B, isn't it? If you guys liked this video, hit that like and sub button and let me know in the comments if you guys want horror stories because that might be fun at a time to the channel.